We're starting off today's video with a question to you guys, the fans, the viewers. Name a free agent down below that you want the Ravens to sign. It can be anybody, okay? As crazy as, I don't know, T. Higgins, or you could do one of our own. Put Ronnie Stanley down there. You guys just let me know and get us started by getting in the comment section. On today's show, we're talking a little bit of free agent targets, okay? The top free agents at the Ravens' biggest positions of need, okay? So I'm going to give you 4 of their biggest needs. We're going to go into each one of those, and we're going to talk a little bit about who I think might be available that can help Baltimore make a run for the Super Bowl next season. Let's start with the biggest areas of need, okay? I added one to this list from last week when I talked about this, okay? Number 1, I think edge rusher is at the top of the list, okay? I think that when you look at this team, sacks, they did a good job at sacking the quarterback, but they did a very very poor job at actually getting to the quarterback. Number 2, you got offensive line. That changes if you sign Ronnie Stanley. I think that goes down a peg or 2 in this order. And then behind that, you got secondary. We're going to talk cornerback and safety. And then last, wide receiver, okay? I think Zay Flowers is great. I think Rashad Bateman's great. I would love another game-changing wide receiver in that depth chart, okay? As of right now, the Ravens are sitting at $12.72 million in cap space. They're on the lower end of pretty much everybody in the National Football League, okay? They are, I think, sitting around 23rd right now in the NFL. They're not as low as some other teams, but you look at teams like the Commanders and the Raiders, they have almost $100 million of cap space, so they don't have as much room to maneuver, but they could do some sort of things, and they could get a little bit more, okay? We talked about this on Tuesday, and if they cut Kyle Van Noy, they could save $4.5 million. If they cut Arthur Mollett, they could save $2.3 million. And if they trade or cut Mark Andrews, they could save $11 million. So if you do all 3 of those things, you're adding about $17 million to that number, and then things open up a little bit. But I don't think they're going to do those. So let's get into the video, talk about starting with edge rushers, okay? Top edge targets, in my opinion, are these 5 right here. Khalil Mack, Hassan Reddick, Matthew Judon, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Josh Sweat. And when I look at that list, okay, I really think, honestly, I'd love anybody of those 5 besides Hassan Reddick. I don't want Hassan Reddick. 10-foot pole between me and Hassan Reddick at all times. But then you kind of look at that list a little bit deeper, and you see a common theme that they're all kind of getting up there in age, right? Khalil Mack's 33. Hassan Reddick's 30. Judon's 32. Lawrence is 32. Josh Sweat, he's really the only young pup of the group at age 27, but he's no spring chicken himself. But then you kind of get to thinking of the fact that this seems to be a theme in Baltimore. Baltimore over the past couple of years has kind of had an affinity for taking flyers and signing older edge targets, older pass rushing free agents, and kind of revitalizing their careers in a sense. Kyle Van Noy is coming off a 12.5 sack year, his most in a single season. Prior to this year, he'd never had double-digit sacks. Okay, Jadeveon Clowney, in the year of 2023, had his best season to date. Okay, former number 1 overall pick, had a fantastic year in Baltimore. And then Justin Houston, before either of those guys, kind of had another revitalization of his career when he was in Baltimore. So could they be doing that again with any of these guys at those kind of high ages for this game of football? My favorites of those 5, if I had to pick 2 of them, are Khalil Mack and DeMarcus Lawrence. Okay, I think Khalil Mack, from a talent perspective, is, besides Josh Sweat, but in my opinion, Josh Sweat's going to be a little bit too expensive. He'll probably be somewhere around $10 or $12 million. But I think Khalil Mack, from a talent perspective, is better than any of those other guys. I think he could do wonders in Baltimore, and I think that he would fit right into this defensive scheme and everything Zach Orr has done so far in his tenure as defensive coordinator. DeMarcus Lawrence, I like him because he could be a really strong asset, but he also isn't going to cost you a lot, okay? I think that Khalil Mack would cost you a little bit more than Lawrence does. But of all of those 5 guys, and I wouldn't mind any of them besides Hassan Reddick, I think Mack and I think Lawrence are my 2 favorites. You let me know in the comment section down below, of those 2 guys, pick one for me. Okay, would you rather have Khalil Mack? Would you rather have DeMarcus Lawrence? Let me know in the comment section down below. You might get hit with a YouTube ad break. When that time comes, go down to the comment section, find this pinned comment, and reply with a KM or DL. Let's go to number 2 on our biggest needs going into this offseason, and that's the offensive line. Okay, we're going to start looking at interior offensive linemen because as of right now, Ronnie Stanley is still on this team, and until he's gone, we're going to talk interior, okay? Here's the top free agent interior offensive lineman. Trey Smith with Kansas City. Will Freeze with Indianapolis. Tevin Jenkins with Chicago. Kevin Zeitler, familiar name, with Detroit. James Daniel with Pittsburgh. And all of those names sound good and well. But in my opinion, with the lack of cap space that you have, and when you're looking at interior offensive line, it's not like the biggest red flag. I don't know if you're going to have that kind of money to spend. And in my opinion, I think that money is kind of spent better elsewhere. Let's look at tier 2, free agent interior offensive linemen. Guys that might be a little bit cheaper. You'll see one of our own on this list in Patrick McCarry. But Mekhi Becton, Brandon Sheriff, Zach Martin, Aaron Banks. Now, a lot of those guys kind of share the same thoughts of the pass rushers, and they're getting up there in age a little bit, especially when you look at a guy like Zach Martin. But in my opinion, someone in tier 2 would be fine. I think they'd be cheaper. I think that they'd be serviceable. And it's almost like you're saying, you know what, I'll take a rental. And in my opinion, you take a rental on a guy for a year. You draft somebody in this upcoming NFL draft at that interior offensive lineman position. You groom them for a year with a guy like Zach Martin, with a guy like Mekhi Becton, and then you insert them into the lineup the next year, okay? But then again, if Stanley is gone, offensive line turns to tackle as the priority over the interior. But as of right now, Stanley, I guess he's not a Baltimore Raven because he's going to be a free agent March 11th. But as of right now, Ronnie Stanley, in my opinion, should still be coming back to Baltimore. I got a lot more free agents to talk about coming up in just a second. But before I do, I got to talk about the sponsor of today's video, and that is our good friends over at Prize Picks. And guys, the big game is almost here, and it's now or never. So don't miss out on the last football game of the season with Prize Picks. It's the best place to win cash while watching the big game. Prize Picks is also giving away a free pick for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes will only need to throw 1 yard to win. And if you're correct on at least one more stat projection, you can win real cash. That is right, ladies and gentlemen. Prize Picks is doing you a favor. They're doing me a favor. They're doing producer Jack a favor. They're giving away 1 free square. So if you want to win at least 1 square and pair it with another one, go ahead. Patrick Mahomes, all he has to do is throw more than a yard. So take advantage of it, ladies and gentlemen. Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need a win to receive a $50 bonus. It's guaranteed, and you can now earn up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. So again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, run your game. On to number 3. We're talking a little bit about the secondary. And honestly, now that I think about it, I feel like secondary is probably above offensive line, okay? So I'm going to switch those two in my mind. They're going to be in this order still in the video, but secondary I think is going to be a little bit more important going into the 2025 season than offensive line is. And let's talk about that. Before we do, I got to give a little bit of shout out to what we got this week on Ravens Rundown. It's going to be a loaded week. We're talking trade rumors. We're giving mock drafts, all of that, all the offseason coverage you could want, you could find right here on Ravens Rundown. Also, every Tuesday we go live 5 p.m. Eastern Time. If you weren't there for this last one, be there for this one. I promise you're not going to want to miss it. To make sure you don't miss it, hit that sub button. Let's start with the top free agent corners on the market. DJ Reed, by large, the top of that list. Then you got Charvarius Ward, Rasul Douglas, Carlton Davis III, Asante Samuel Jr., all the way down to Paulson Adebo. And in my opinion, of all of those guys, I think some guys can be serviceable, and I think some guys could do well. But I would kind of rather address cornerback in the draft or by trade. Okay, I think, and I talked about this last week, but I think Jair Alexander might be a legitimate possibility. He's a guy that I would like to look at. And if you're not going to trade for one, then I think this upcoming draft has a lot of good cornerback talent, and I think Baltimore addresses it there. So let's talk about safeties, okay? If you're not going to get a cornerback free agent, maybe you'll get a safety one. And this is a list that I like a little bit more because, in my opinion, these guys just seem a little bit more affordable. Not the Javon Hollins, but when you go down, you look at the Trevor Morey or the Jeremy Chins. I think that's where this team needs to go. And I think just in general, if it's not either of those guys, this team needs to go safety and free agency, okay? I think that you could pair Kyle Hamilton, you could pair Ardarius Washington with just another solid piece for that back end, and I think that would do wonders for this team. And Ben Solak of ESPN, he agrees. He said the Ravens' age and lack of speed in the secondary nearly swamped their season, and they'll be desperate to avoid a similar trap in 2025. They'll go out to free agent safety Trevon Moehrig, who had a strong contract year with Las Vegas, and Jeremy Chin, who's a great Kyle Hamilton foil to revitalize the core of their defense. And kind of like with the edge rusher position we talked just a couple minutes ago, it's kind of been a theme to sign more veteran safeties in Baltimore and kind of give them better back ends of their careers. You did it with Earl Thomas. You did it with Eric Weddle. And before Marcus Williams turned into a pumpkin last year, he was great kind of coming in the back of his career, all right? So this is a theme, and I think it's one that Baltimore kind of plays into, and I think they go Chin, or I think they go more, okay? Sound off in the comment section for me. What is Baltimore's biggest need going in to this offseason, okay? I've got them listed. I'd love to know if you guys agree with me. Let me know in the comment section down below. We've hit 3. Time to do our final one, and that is wide receiver, okay? We've talked about this a couple times over the last couple weeks, and there's some pretty good wide receivers. It's not super top-heavy. T. Higgins is really the only guy on this list that's going to get a ton of money. But when I look down at this list, I've got 3 guys that have really got my sights set on, okay? Let's start with Keenan Allen, okay? 6'2", 211 pounds. I know he had a down year with the Bears, but everything that they did offensively was just a massive question mark. I think he's got a lot of good years left in his career. I think one of them could be in Baltimore. Let's go a little bit younger. Let's talk Josh Palmer, wide receiver out of Tennessee. Sure, I'm a little biased. I watched him in college, but still, he's got a fantastic catch radius, and I think he's a guy that will be a solid wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 for the rest of his career, and I think he would pair perfectly with a guy like Rashad Bateman, a guy like Zay Flowers, and just be kind of a different look of wide receiver on this team, and he's still young. He's a guy I would love to go after. And let's go back to older a little bit. DeAndre Hopkins, okay? Who knows if he wants to leave Kansas City? It might not be his choice if he's going to leave Kansas City or not. And I know he's a little bit older, but what he's done in that offense with Patrick Mahomes being a deep threat option for Mahomes, with his size, with his just catch radius, with his veteran leadership, I think he'd be great on this roster. You got a lot of young wide receivers. I think this is a chance to pair them with an older guy that can do a lot for this team still, okay? And all of those guys, they kind of have one common thing. I want a wide receiver that's different than Bateman and different than Flowers in the way that they're a little bit bigger, they're a little bit more of a deep threat, they're a little bit more of a jump ball fade end zone guy. I don't think Baltimore has that guy on their roster right now. I think Keenan Allen, I think Josh Palmer, I think DeAndre Hopkins could be those guys. And I just think that this team needs to address wide receiver. We saw what happened in the playoff game, right? Zay Flowers goes down. Sure, Rashad Bateman stepped up, but like outside of that, Isaiah Likely was great. But you just didn't really have much more in the wide receiver room. I think this team had a wide receiver 1 in Flowers, a wide receiver 2 in Bateman, and I think they had a wide receiver 4 or 5 in Nelson Aguilar. I need a wide receiver 3, and I think any of those guys could be it. Thanks so much for watching today. Really do appreciate every single one of you guys. Make sure you hit that sub button to stay up to date with the latest on the Baltimore Ravens. From me right here on Ravens Rundown. So if you have not already, join the flock today and subscribe.